Well, here we go again. It's a Tuesday. Let's have some fun, some amazing conversations on the show. We always brag about that. What's coming up? Well, what if the Mona Lisa could sing? In the sound of a masterpiece, blind composer Bobby Goulder imagines iconic artworks like Monet's Waterlily Gardens. Through immersive soundscapes, painting with music, Sound of a Masterpiece is a project born of inclusion that proves accessibility doesn't just level the experience, it elevates it. And shortly we sit down with Bobby Goulder to find out how. This is a piece of work where, folks, you get lost in the sound.
This is Kelly and Company.
Thanks for being with us on the program. You can email us at kellyco@ami.ca. You can call us at 1-866-509-4545. Love to hear your voice. Love to hear from you. So please feel free at any time to drop us a message. Alicia Grace Chenier joining me on the program. For now, Nisreen will be along shortly to get us into our second conversation. But Alicia and I will kick things off now. Alicia, welcome back.
Thanks, Kelly. Happy to be here.
You have an interesting discussion. As we bring you on the program, we talk usually what's out there. It could be involving theater, it could be the media a little bit, could be our streaming services like it is today. What you've got for us today is a review of Netflix's groundbreaking medical drama, Pulse. The series is making headlines for its authentic portrayal of disability, featuring a character that uses a wheelchair, played, get this, folks, by an actor with lived experience. Geez, what a novel idea. Let's delve into how Pulse is setting new standards for representation on screen. I think this is great. This is something that so many of us are just always pleased when we hear this, for what, of course, it means for any of us interested in the field. So tell us a little bit about Pulse and what makes its approach to disability representation stand out in the television landscape.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. I'm happy it's a medical show as well, because a lot of the time, there's a lot of actors playing medical. There's a lot of people who are playing TV, actors who are playing in medical doc shows that may be portraying like being blind or being in a wheelchair, but they don't actually have it. And so now there's a main character in Pulse, which is on Netflix, and they introduce a character named Harper Sims, who is a second-year emergency medicine resident, might I say, at Miami's McGuire Medical Center. That's a tongue twister. And so, and Harper is portrayed by an actor named Jesse Yates, an actor who is an authentic wheelchair user. So bringing, authentic representation, as you mentioned, to this role. And I think something that's really interesting about Jesse Yates herself is that the creators and her collaborated with real life physicians who use wheelchairs to make sure it's authentic and it's accurate and it accurately depicts the experiences of what a doctor who is in a wheelchair experiences.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's kind of like the flip. We want the authenticity. We've got the character who can give us that. But of course, obviously, as any actor would, you need that background of the medical aspects, but also how does this character adapt? How you collaborate to figure out what would be the way the character would be able to perform this and make it credible as a wheelchair user. Exactly.
And I think too, the actor kind of did a little bit of kind of method acting in a way, and studied under even shadowed a doctor in emergency medicine who had a spinal cord injury to prepare for this role.
Very good. Very good. And again, we always talk about different situations, what you can do versus somebody else with vision impairment can do in a certain circumstance, especially on stage or behind in front of the camera. What do you feel going forward? We've got here that this addresses when viewers watch, I remember years ago, people used to say the fictional family, the Huxtables. That's not really a depiction of a black family, a standard black family, but it wasn't supposed to be. What are your thoughts when it comes to this kind of thing? Have we progressed enough that people understand that, you think?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to like addressing certain things, I think that Pulse does a really good thing of showing, and it addresses ableism as well in the medical field. So it does, like, the show does not shy away from exploring the challenges that the character Harper faces, who includes instances such as ableism from patients and colleagues. There's an episode where they are questioned by a patient's parents solely on her disability, and it kind of shows like the mental toll that has on the
Mm-hmm.
character. And it's really important that these realities are portrayed, and that the character doesn't necessarily have like the luxury of it, and they don't have the luxury of messing up like
Yep.
their able-bodied peers do, as often
Right.
many of us in the in the disability community face working in like just working in general.
Yeah, let's be really straightforward and brutally honest. The reality is, you work at a place, you're going to answer questions that a lot of time border on inappropriate. Not because people are trying to be rude, because they're trying to understand, because it's so out of their depth and their sphere as to how you're doing what you do. Or some would feel, what are you trying to make me do? Justify how come I'm here? And then you're going in a situation like this where lives are at stake. You're going to always feel that stress of, if something goes wrong, is it going to be blamed on my disability? Could it possibly be related to my disability? Let's be fair. We are fallible people just like everyone else, and unfortunately, we all have limits, regardless. So I understand that. I think, wow, how much stress that would be, and how do you answer when, as you said, challenged by a family? Are you the right person to be doing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this character shows it. Like, there's a lot of different family dynamics within this character, that's another conversation for another day. But I think, the support system that this character has is very good amongst her workers, which, it's very lucky for her to have that situation, like, even though it's written. But if the show does get a second season, I would like them to push the narrative a little bit and really maybe show that maybe like there's a colleague of the character who may not think that her being in a wheelchair and working in an emergency room is unsafe, and or bringing in those stigmas and misconceptions.
Is it the right venue in your mind for some of the disability stories, or would you see them here, but very much showcased in a different way? Possibility, not even including the main character with a disability in a story about disability, depending on the needs of the situation of the story being told.
Yeah, that's great. Can you reword that actually? Sorry.
That's all right. I'm saying,
Yeah.
if you're looking for disability stories told, do they have to include the main character with the disability? We would just love to see these stories, these expressions
Yes.
of information, these tales told in any venue
Yes.
on Pulse.
Exactly. And I think too, something that I would like to note too in Pulse is that like I feel like that they couldn't have just like, it would have been nice for the character of just to be in a wheelchair and maybe just like experiencing these, but they did address, the character in the chair in the first episode, and
Yes.
kind of like the backstory of that too, which is again fine. But I think moving forward for what we want to see in TV, it would be really nice for them to just have like characters with disabilities and it not be something to like even discuss.
Okay. Alicia Grace, thank you very much for being with us. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again next month when you rejoin us on the show.
Thank you, Kelly.
Alicia Grace Chenier was shedding light on how Pulse is paving the way for more authentic and inclusive storytelling in television. It's so encouraging to see such strides in representation, and we hope it sets a precedent for future productions that are being made out there, because it's so important to get it out there. Well, we're always talking about art when we get a chance to. We really enjoy it, and so much unique stuff, such as our character in Pulse and getting a chance to unpack that a little bit. And we've got so much more. Nisreen joins me for our next interview, but first, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. I mentioned Nisreen, and of course, that means our social media guru, taking care of whatever conversation she's having out there and posts. You can find us on Twitter and, of course, on Instagram at Kelly & Co. AMI.
What if the Mona Lisa can sing? In the sound of a masterpiece, blind composer Bobby Goulder reimagines iconic artworks like Monet's Waterlily garden through immersive soundscapes, painting with music on an impressionist's canvas. A project born of inclusion that proves accessibility doesn't just level the experience, it elevates it. Welcome, Bobby Goulder, on the show. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, let us get started. We'll go back. Okay, so tell us about your collab with Dolby Atmos and how did you get the gig?
So I was approached by Dolby, who had this incredible idea of reimagining artworks in kind of audio form, so via music and soundscape. And I think it was pretty important to have a member of the composer's team who had some experience of visual impairment, because part of the idea here is to there's no way really of like replacing the experience of experiencing visual art, but you can bring people closer to some of the emotions that that come out by kind of reimagining it in audio form. So I was able to bring not just my compositional skills, but some lived experience as well to the table of, maybe not seeing so much of, I do have some vision, so I have central vision loss. So when I see art, I can get a kind of general picture around the sides, but not a lot of detail. So I think that was quite important to kind of bring to the table a bit of that lived experience.
It's interesting because you know that there's been so many of these things done to bring space to so many of us with vision impairments, and what this might, if you could hear the Milky Way or anything like that, some of that is really interesting because they're just using tones and stuff. But a lot of time emotion we feel through music. So as this progressed, what was the experience like in doing the creating? If you could walk us through, I mean, like you say, you look at the picture, and where does it go from there, involved with all that collaboration and finally finished product per piece?
Right. So we tried to have a kind of unique approach to each piece, just because there's such a range here of in the paintings that we chose, such a range of kind of artistic approaches. But I guess in general, we were looking at, so when I say we, I'm talking about myself and a team of composers from the New Radiophonic Workshop, who are complete audio wizards here in in the UK. So we kind of collabed on this project, and for each painting we looked at obviously the visual detail that's available, and we kind of discussed artistic approaches, brush strokes, and the actual kind of physical content of the piece as well, but also perhaps some historical context of the artist themselves, or maybe the artist's character themselves, and tried to kind of capture as much of that stuff as possible, knowing all along that like there's no way of achieving all of it at once, and everyone's interpretation is going to be different. So we were trying to kind of do as best we could in terms of capturing, every sort of element that you can experience in an artwork, but also, there's a certain freedom in kind of knowing that you can kind of do what you like, and it's a subjective thing, really.
Well, you mentioned this. Obviously, this is a big project, and it takes some time. So how long did it take from start to finish?
Well, we had our kind of initial conversations about the different approaches in, I'd say, the beginning of October, maybe mid-October 24, so last October. We wrapped on the pieces in the middle of February. So that's like 4 months, which was really tight actually.
Wow.
And like I had a Christmas show going on, which wiped me out for most of December and actually all of December. But the way it kind of worked was I was always kind of the first link in the chain. So it was my sort of musical response that started the process off. And then, you know, we would kind of pull the sound around and metamorphose bits or add other elements. And so, and then when we came to after Christmas, that was a kind of like, we replaced all of the MIDI piano with a real nice studio grand piano. And then we went into the Dolby mix at the very end. And so I was kind of the key element right at the start. And then the guys did their magic. And then I came in to re-record, and then I was there for the mix. I guess I was consulting all the way through on kind of how it would work visually, or rather in terms of the visual access or non-visual access.
I really thought it was going to take longer than 4 months, so that's pretty incredible.
We should have taken it longer.
Do you wish now, looking back, that it did? Like, I mean, you know, as an artist, you sit there and play around, do something, you're never satisfied, and there has to be a cutoff point. We've talked about that a lot on the show. Do you feel, no, man, it's lacking here? You know, as the critique, the harshest critic, do you think it should have been longer?
I think I would have liked maybe a little more time to sort of be allowed to reject some of my ideas, because I'm like you say, my own biggest critic. So I would kind of send things around being like, hey, here's some rough ideas, like obviously it's, you know, not kind of fully fleshed and there's more I can do here, blah 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 blah, and they'd be like, great, we can use that. Which either means I nailed it first time, which is very unlikely, or, you know, I think, but at the same time, I did quite enjoy that kind of the feeling of always moving forward. Like we would always just we would take a thing and then we would move on to the next thing, and then we would take that and make it turn into something else. And like by the time it got to the end of the process, I was like, whoa, that's not what I thought it was going to turn out like, but I love it. So there was something very fun about just keeping going forward and not questioning yourself all the time.
I just can't conceive, Bobby. I mean, with the vision you have, whether you're fully sighted, vision impaired, or someone describes it to you, everyone is so individual. So what is the process in your mind if someone said, well, someone told you about the picture, we've got the description before most of the pieces. How do you decide how does Bobby decide what the heck a painting sounds like? What's that translation process? Look and see. And if you had to tell people what you were thinking out loud, or if we could tap in, let's see what he's thinking as he examines, what would we hear? And then how do you get it to the keyboard?
Okay, well, maybe I'll look into a couple of examples. Maybe that'll help explain it. So maybe the Monet is quite a useful example, because that was one where I saw real, quite clear parallels between the way that Monet approached his painting and the way that a contemporary of his, Claude Debussy, approached classical, you know, piano composition and also orchestral composition. So it's actually something I studied quite carefully a while back, is like relationships between art and music, particularly in that kind of impressionist turn of the century era. So I started with quite I guess it was quite simple. I guess not the most harmonically straightforward thing, but this kind of rippling piano effect thing, fairly heavily inspired by the work of Debussy, but the idea that we discussed was that some of the notes there that I would compose were then going to be kind of mapped onto like the sound of real water droplets. So the water drops are kind of pitched to the sound of to the to the music that I wrote, if that makes sense. So you get this kind of blend of the piano music and the pitch drops, and it creates this whole kind of this world.
Amazing.
So that was one where I saw quite a clear parallel in like the way that Monet painted in this very quite sort of mottled, blurred technique, and the kind of rippling sort of mushy harmony of Debussy. And I don't know, maybe I'll jump to another example. The Jean-Michel Basquiat is probably like the opposite end of the spectrum here, where we wanted to get across the character of how Basquiat actually did his work. So he's a graffiti artist. We know that he worked very kind of instinctually and very impulsively, and so there's like a lot of energy. There's a lot of. It's the only one we did to a click track for any audio nerds that are listening. So we kind of, it's got a lot of rhythm and a lot of prepared piano kind of plucking and knocking and stuff. And then this Cecil Taylor inspired like free jazz improvisation, where it's just like anything and everything just kind of chucked at the piano. And
Wow.
I could go on. There's like that painting is about like the relationship between Egyptian history and like how it's how it translates in Western culture, and so I tried to kind of combine some Egyptian scales with the blues scale, and kind of make this thing that was sort of that drew from elements of both traditions. There's
it's really
all that
interesting.
Stuff in there.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when you go to when you look at artworks, everybody has their own perspective of what you feel about the artwork, what you see, how you interpret it. So I want you to tell me, like, how do you want listeners to feel when they hear the album?
I mean, I want them to feel what they feel. It's and it's I suppose there wasn't really things that I was I guess I hope that the music helps the viewer or the listener kind of notice something or feel something that they maybe wouldn't have done without the music. Maybe that's a kind of, I don't know if that's a cop-out answer, but
it's your answer.
It's my answer. So I want the music to kind of elevate the visual experience in a way that makes someone go, oh, I didn't actually notice that aspect of the painting, or I didn't realize that it had this kind of depth until I heard that, and then I kind of sat in it more, and it made me watch it. I don't know.
Because I could tell you, when I was listening to the album, I kept noticing something new every time I listened to it.
That's what I was just going to say. The audio alone makes you feel that way, right? You miss different things. Because that's what I wondered about the process when it comes to making it and then moving on to the next thing. But the final product, as you guys collaborate and the different sounds that would be added, I don't know how much you sat in on that, but what did you feel in the results of what was added? And how much consulting were you in on when the group said, hey, I mean, obviously you trust their professionalism, their knowledge, and their skills because they're so gifted at what they do. How about all those additions to it to flush them out? Did some of them really surprise you? Did some of them were they in your head, the things that you knew they were going to do that you would have done with the same thing with the piece?
Oh, I mean, I would say on the whole, everything that was added or enhanced or morphed in some way improved the pieces to a great extent. And I suppose there were some corners that were taken which made me go like, that's a really cool idea. I don't know that it's helping a non-sighted viewer actually appreciate what I thought was there to appreciate, but it was a good exercise in kind of stepping back and going, well, just because I think that, like, why does that mean that someone else viewing and listening would think that?
But I wanted to use this sound somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But I hear you.
So
that's a good point.
The Mona Lisa is maybe an example of one where my initial creation was quite a straightforward. It had some kind of pride and some status to it, but it was like a medieval madrigal style piece, and I knew that we were going to kind of map that to a sort of harpsichord sample using pluck strings inside a grand piano. But the depth and the kind of intensity of the soundscape around it was definitely something that I hadn't like anticipated us. But before we had the discussions and before we certainly my first sort of few looks at the painting, I wasn't imagining this like quite dark world, but then you look closer into her face and her stare, and there's something a bit haunting about it, and it's such a monumental painting itself in terms of its context or its like status in the art world, in history, that it does need that kind of gravity. So I guess it's interesting that even I, as the composer, was surprised at some of the or it made me think about the paintings in new ways. Yeah.
Was there a particular artwork that was especially challenging or even rewarding for you to interpret exactly?
Yes. I mean, the cop-out answer is all of them. But because like I really did learn so much from each piece, and I did learn so much by tackling all of them. I loved getting into the Salvador Dali, actually, because that's so mysterious and so weird. But trying to kind of get into his head a little bit, or figure out what some of those objects mean, or like try to attach meaning by my own interpretation of it, trying to attach meaning via a melody or a sequence of chords or whatever, and then this idea of using in the painting there are these like clocks that are sort of stretched and like folded over surfaces, and it's about the kind of how time is warped in the sort of dream state. And we kind of I ended up doing these sort of bell sounds that we sort of pitched down and started bending the pitches around, and it was so fun to sort of try and like I said earlier on, try and map elements of the visual information onto a certain musical technique.
Wow, what a creative license. Just fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, total pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was Bobby Goulder, composer, pianist, and musical director behind The Sound of a Masterpiece, offering us a new way to experience art, one that's immersive, inclusive, and imaginative. Love it. The Sound of a Masterpiece is a 7-track album available on Amazon Music and Apple Music. Check it out.
Okay, well, Niz and I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you for being with us, ladies and gentlemen, on the program today. Remember to check out our podcast when you get a chance, especially when you want to listen to anything back. Subscribe if you would. Give us a rating and review. Also, could you check us out on YouTube? Subscribe to our YouTube page and enjoy so much of our great content there that's sitting there waiting for you. So subscribe to both. On the next show, the Hot Docs Film Festival is North America's largest documentary film festival. It just wrapped up in Toronto, showcasing Canadian and international documentaries and nonfiction storytelling. Film critic Michael McNeely joins us with his top highlights. We'll talk to him tomorrow and you on the show. Fedora's off to you. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.